All right, so I got my tie rods in. These are down here, Moog. Yeah, there's the part number. And they fit, the threads fit on this part, but it is too long. And so in the manual, for the power steering rack, which is what this is, it says you have to cut off 1 3/4 inches off the end and then install this extender here. This is the extender you get in the kit. Now, that might sound like you're cutting it short to just extend it back out again, but my belief of that is you're actually changing the point. If you look at the pivot point here of the inner tie rod, you're actually changing the pivot point. So instead of it being more inboard, you're actually pushing it outboard. And so that'll allow the better alignment from the end of the extender and the rack to the actual spindle. That's my theory anyway. So I just need to, I just installed, and it comes off pretty easy. I didn't want to pop these clamps off, these Oetker clamps, because they're not necessarily the easiest to get, but I have the tool to put them back on. I just need to find new ones. And then don't forget there's a little tube that runs in between the boots. I'm assuming is some sort of vent. And then, yeah, so I got to just cut this end off. Well, I'll cut, if you can see here, cut 1 3/4 inches off there, and then rethread this back on and see if it changes the angle and allows me to put the spindle in. So we'll see. All right, so I got the tie rods installed. I'm not too pleased with the angles and the fitment of them, but they work. So for now, they're in there, and the toe, I got the toe pretty much within a range where you could roll the car and you could operate the steering system. So I think eventually what I'm going to do is bump steer kit, because what I was looking at online is like some of the bump steer kits, they're bolt through, and I think this setup would benefit from one of those kits instead of the factory. Because really, if you look at what I'm doing here, I'm taking an 87 to 90, because this is a 87 to 93 steering rack from a Mustang. These are 96 spindles, and so you have to put the tie rod from the 87 to 93 in the 96 spindle, which it goes in there, but it doesn't sit all the way. So the wedge, the cone part of the steering knuckle, doesn't accept that tie rod all the way. But you can get it within a spec to roll it, to, even drive it lightly if you had to. But I think ultimately you got to go bump steer kit. Plus, you're going to benefit from a bump steer kit anyway. I think what I'm noticing is that all the little problems that you run into with using a Mustang as a donor car are solved with the complete kit. So the complete kit is the developed kit. If you want to develop it yourself, buy the base kit, spend the time and the money to develop it. But if you want to buy a developed kit, buy the complete kit. Because that's what I'm seeing, is that like all these little issues are problems that you run into, like using the lower control arm from the donor. Oh, well, Factory 5 has a lower control arm. Oh, it comes on a complete kit. Yeah, it's just little things like that. So, save yourself some time, probably, and do a, and the other thing that you don't know, because you don't even think about it, is like I upgraded to this rack from Factory 5, but they don't tell you it's an 87, like I said in the previous video, They don't tell you it's an 87 to 93. So if you use a 96 donor, they give you an 80, and you upgrade the rack from the option in the kit. I mean, that means you're getting spindles off a 96 for an 87 and 93 rack. You know, like nobody tells you that. So, well, I'm telling you now. But so when you're thinking about your kit and how to order your kit, keep in mind that like really the base kit was made for an 87 to 93, and then it was made for a 96 to 04. And then, you know, probably by that point the complete kit was even more developed. You know, I don't know when complete kit started, what Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4. But you know, I don't know. Just sharing the process, and part of it is that like I didn't know by looking at it. I never built one of these before, so going down that road and figuring all that stuff out is part of building it. So, you know, also from what you know, going back to this issue, and again, I don't even think the angle of this is correct, because there is an angle. You know, when you look at a control arm with the angle of the tie rod, it has to meet. There's like two intersecting lines that they should meet at a point, from what I can understand. And so this lower control arm kind of doesn't do. Now, people online say you've got to, and a guy who actually asked Factory 5, who did a thread on it that I read, said you have to put weight on the suspension to get it to settle in so that you can, then you'll see it will fit better. There's also guys who move the coilover with different spacers back a little bit. That was another solution that some people said. And then there's also Breeze Automotive, who makes the offset bushing kit for these. So yeah, you know, there's that stuff too. I don't know. I'm just gonna keep building. I'm gonna keep putting the parts on, and then I will develop. I'm gonna develop this car by driving it. I've made the mistake many times of trying to ultimately develop a car or a bike or whatever while I'm building it, only to find out that my theories and assumptions were wrong when I started to ride or drive it and put it on the road. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put the parts on that I have, get it going, get it farther along, get it completed, get it on the road, start developing the car in the real world of driving it, because I don't think there's any better way to do that. Because, you know, looking at, again, I've made the mistake of like looking at something myself and going like, oh, that doesn't look right, and only to find out that no, it's fine. And as long as you don't wreck the car while driving it and while doing something like that, like trying to test it out and you wreck it, then, you know, but that's why you don't start out driving it as fast as it can possibly go. You start out slow and start working the bugs and ironing those creases out. So that's how I'm going to do it. So the steering works. It operates. I've torqued the nuts here, the castle nuts. It goes back and forth. It feels a little odd, but then again, I don't have a steering wheel on it. That makes a big difference too. So I think I'm going to put the steering wheel on just to see how it feels, because right now that would be the best way. And so I think I might do that, because I'm just trying to rotate it by hand, and you don't have a lot of torque into the steering system, so it could feel really rough, but you're trying to rotate the shaft by hand. So, yeah. And next up should be rear end installation. So I think that's tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. All right, so got the rear end installed here. Also, so what I did with the spring purchases, they want you to use this stock rubber one, but I had to order the purchase for the bottom, and so you can only buy them in a set. And so I ordered 2 sets because it was an accident. I wasn't getting the first set on time, and so I ordered another set because I thought the first set got lost. So just to keep from having to wait too long, ordered another set. And then of course the second set came, and then the first set got found and sent. So I ended up with 2 full sets of spring perch, polyurethane mounts. Now in the manual they tell you not to use polyurethane because it slides, because it has like lubrication in it. But I figured what I'll do is I'll fix it somehow to the spring perch. So I tried a couple things. First I tried to put a couple zip ties here. I drilled holes through the metal and then the polyurethane, and then put zip ties, but then it kind of sagged. So then I tried to silicone it. The silicone wasn't really holding it that well. As you can see, it's kind of, because it's slippery, it doesn't want to stick that well to it. So then I decided, okay, what I'll do is I'll drill 4 holes. Well, essentially it'll have 4 holes through the metal, through the polyurethane, and then I will zip tie it. So I've got, zip tie, zip tie, zip tie, zip tie all the way around. And then I'm using 2 of the polyurethane spring perches that are cut and then fit around the metal on the spring perch, and then zip tied to it, so it shouldn't move. And the nice thing is it has made the spring kind of not that loose in it, so I kind of like that. Then after I got that done, I might also figure out a way to clamp it so that you adjust it and then clamp it in place and it can't rotate at all. But it's not rotating that much right now, so might not have to do that. Then I decided, okay, it's time to put the rear end in. Now, I had built this stand, this square tubing, square tubing base with casters, and then square tubing for a rear end of a truck that I did. But it works because rear ends are pretty much, they're not all universal, but they're all around the same sizes. So I tried it, to fit this one to it, and it works pretty good. So the nice thing about it is when you're working on it, you can rotate it, in this fixture. And then when you go to install it, it works out nicely as an installation fixture. And so what I did was, I have these are like Harley motorcycle jacks. You put one in the back, of a Harley under the frame rails, and then you can lift it up, because a Harley has under engine frame rails essentially. But they work they're like scissor jacks, so 15/16 socket and speed handle, and you can set them at different heights, so they're kind of nice. So the nice thing is you slide 2 pieces of tubing through the stand and then pick it up slightly, and then this motorcycle jack slides right under it. Then I picked it up off the ground, lifted it up until I could slide it back onto these jacks, and then I could start to lift. So if you look back here, it's sitting on the base of my frame stand, and then I could lift it up into position. Now, I also thought of using a cherry picker and reaching down through here and picking it up. The only thing about that is you're kind of limited into, you need to be able to go up and like move, and because the arms are kind of tricky if all the mounts, and so like to get the arms connected, it's actually easier to attach them to the frame first. It tells you the other way around in the manual, but I think if you attach them to the frame first and then you move the rear end in place and then attach, that'll be the better way to do it, because you do have to finagle. So you have to be able to, if you're looking at it through right here, you have to be able to kind of maneuver it like this in order to get all the bolt holes to start to line up, and then you can work your way back and forth and lower, raise this side, lower, raise that side, pick it up, put it down. The thing weighs like 200 something pounds, so it's not, once it's on the up elevated, it's not hard to move around, but you know, that's it there. So that's the rear end installed. I'm using the control arms I bought from Jegs, polyurethane bushings in the top, pretty much polyurethane bushings throughout. The brackets in the back are the traction lock brackets from the kit. What would I do differently next time? Coilovers, for sure. I wouldn't even think about it. There's just no point in using these when you can have a nice coilover that takes the place of the, you know, because you already have the mount. There's the mount there for the coilover. So that's what I would do differently next time. But for now, here's how we're gonna build it. Yeah, that's it there. What else? Oh yeah, that's pretty much, you know, day's work to get everything kind of situated and in there. And next step is securing everything, tightening everything, and then getting maybe a rough ride height adjustment. We'll see. Alright, so everything here in the rear end is tightened in terms of the linkages. On that side, the shock and the quad shock is installed with the quad shock bracket. And on this side, I'm about to install the other Coney shock. Part number, there's the part number. So if you're using the standard non-coilover, the shock comes with new bushings for the top, but you have to space the bolt and everything for the bottom. So this bolt came with, actually, this bolt came with my linkage arms. I used a different bolt for a certain section. So now I'm going to use that bolt for the lower shock mounting. In order to space it, I've got these washers. I put 2 on one side and 1 on the other, just like I did on the other side, and it seems to have space, you know, keep it nice and centered in the mount there. You'll notice when you open the bag here, you've got 2 dished washers here. One goes on the bottom. And then you have the bushing. Now the bushing, you'll see, has a dished part and an embossed part. The embossed part goes up into the hole. Also make sure that they give you these limiting straps. Make sure you put the limiting strap on the bolt. I'm going to use it in place of a washer. So this bracket looks a little tighter than the one on the other side. I might not need the third spacer. We'll try it. Now, when you go to install the quad shock bracket, it sits at an angle like that, and it also is labeled. You see there, right hand front, right hand front. The other one says left hand front. Pretty cool, easy. Now the kit comes with hardware, but their hardware is smaller in diameter, and so I bumped up I got my own hardware because it fits in these holes a little better. I wanted a tighter fit, so there. And you can see here, we got the cable, limiting strap, whatever you want to call it. More commonly used in off-road applications, but using it here. And then this sits at a little bit of an angle, but quad shock bolts in between there. Make sure when you're tightening down your shock that the two embossed parts are going into the hole, and then you want a nice squish in the bushing. Also, make sure that your logos are facing out so people could see. So I'm also using a Coney quad shop, part number. Here it is there. Give you a pretty cool Coney Classic sticker. Yeah. Stick it on something. Now, the other one, I put this in first, and then the bolt. But I think this time we do a little differently. It's the original bolt. It should be fine. I wire brushed it and then sprayed it with some clear, so it has a shiny clear coat on it. Some of the cardboard stuck to it. Okay. Easier. Washer, and then a new nylock nut that I sourced. Now everything's ready to torque. All right, so there it is. All put in. That's the rear end quad shocks, regular shocks, limiting straps. Yeah. I guess if I were to do it again, coilovers. Way simpler, way easier. We will see how my design for these, the little pads there, I guess isolators, I think they're gonna work pretty good. Yeah, everything's torqued, everything's ready to go. I just have to take the stand out and everything and let it drop down completely. I've also put steering wheel on, just kind of cool just to see how that works. But yeah, next steps, aluminum. And then I think they had you do the fuel tank, so now that the rear end's in. So we will see how it all goes.